You're listening to the Autism Weekly podcast. Each week, we share community voices and bring light to stories that increase awareness, acceptance, equity, access, and inclusion. If you haven't already, subscribe to join the Autism Weekly family. I'm your host, Jeff Skibitsky. This week, we welcome Aaron Smith. Aaron is a young man who identifies as autistic, and since he was 5 years old, his favorite musical artist has been Elvis Presley. He decided to create a live tribute to Elvis and has made a career impersonating him on stage. Today, we're going to talk about coping with autism and how that affects the performance and the professional life, and how to pursue one's dreams no matter what barriers may exist. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
It's a real pleasure to be here.
So, as we go through this, one thing I'd love to be able to do, Aaron, is get a piece of what drove you down this career path. Not a lot of people have gone this route. So give us a little bit of a history of how you found Elvis impersonation as a career.
Well, I would have to say, going from a younger age, I never was into sports as much as my dad wanted me to be or my family wanted to be. I went hardcore into the music and choir and anything theatrical. And from a young age, once I discovered Elvis, it was just this, I guess, rabbit hole of infatuation and obsession and just that was my thing. And then as I got older and more mature, it was discovering who he was as an artist, and also then kind of trying to, my music teacher would always incorporate an Elvis act or something into the play for me, which was really nice. But it was just anything I could learn to absorb his costuming and his music and anything that had to do really was my obsession as a young kid. And then when I got older, I really dreamed of doing something with it. But that's how it got started from like really young. It just was everything and anything I could learn about him.
I think that's awesome, is that, I mean, you characterize it as an obsession, but it really is almost like a lifelong study. And the ability that, and I've gone and looked at your Instagram and I've seen the videos that you've posted, but the idea that you know so much of the characteristics of Elvis and you're able to really bring that to your art, it brings about this idea that having this real intense interest is such a benefit, and it could really help to create new paths and new opportunities. So you talked just right now about ways that you incorporated Elvis into your life, whether that was with your drama teachers when you were growing up. Were there other ways that people around you helped you to be able to build on this success of really kind of getting to understand Elvis and driving that passion?
I would have to say my mom. My mom was a big supporter in anything. It was, as long as you can do something well, don't do it half. To always put 100% into, what you're gonna do. And also, it was not, the hard thing was balancing, therapy and because growing up I had a therapist and there were appointments, and then it was like, they're telling us, well, he shouldn't be doing this or he should be doing that. And so it was really having supportive people in my corner, not only my parents, but people in the field as well. That was like, this is kind of an out of the box thing for an autistic person to do. Normally they want their headphones on and they want a quiet atmosphere. To go out on a stage in front of people and to be in the theater is not fitting that mold.
And you actually hit on something that's super interesting to me. And I think it's something that the field of treatment has changed drastically over the years. But the idea that people were telling you that you shouldn't do things, that you can't do things, that we don't want you hyper-focused on something all the time, that to me strikes as a potential limitation. And I would imagine is that the treatment community probably should be more open-minded to figure out ways to be able to support your passion and work on goals and skills that maybe you want to work on. And that might be being able to present publicly. That might be being able to plan out schedules or create a website. How much do you feel like the treatment community was able to help through that process versus the stop?
I would have to say in the early 2000s, I think there was just a standard at the time. And like, I don't think there was as much advocacy or awareness for it. Cause I remember a lot of it was from like I don't want to say the molds, but like your basic, you go in for an appointment, they assess you, da, 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 da. And it's like, it was, no, you shouldn't, or you know, that's going to be a stressor, da, 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 da. And my mom ended up having an independent therapist that would come in weekly and work on money, time telling, independent living skills, that sort of thing. But also we would always touch on like, if this is something you want to do, we'll help make that possible with skills training. And we're not going to say, don't do it, because this is something that not only gives him social interaction with the public and with people, but it gives him a way to kind of be more comfortable in front of people because he's putting on a character. So it's a social skills therapy in a way that isn't something your typical autistic person would want to do as a stress relieving thing or as a soothing thing or something of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, it's not intuitive that would be the correlation that we'd be seeing. But it makes so much sense, is that you take somebody's passion and you figure out, okay, so how do we work with this to be able to give them every single thing they want in their life? Is that I do better when there's something I care about. And it helps me to say, yes, I'm committed. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to do it. And it sounds like you found that, but there must have been struggles along the way. There's probably tons of successes. But right. Tell me about the path of, deciding I'm going to put myself out there. I'm getting on stage. I'm performing. How does that feel? How did you work through that process to get where you are now?
That was the hill. That was the like hills and valleys of my early like teen life. Was I would go to school. I ended up leaving the public school system because I was bullied so bad, which was that was just, not all kids understand. So things like that are going to happen. But my parents put me in a private school, which was beneficial because it's independent learning. It's one-on-one. But I was balancing that and discovering who I was as a person. And then on the side, I was trying to get noticed or get discovered or, get a band together and try to do this, on the weekends. And it was difficult because I also went through a temp agency for job skills training. So I'm kind of brains going a mile a minute. I'm always trying to do this and that. And so the struggles was making it a reality of like, yes, I have to put my skills and what I'm learning for adulthood as a priority, but I also don't want to drop this and put it on the back burner either. So it was always doing something, and not always financially was it possible to go to every contest, to go to every festival, to travel and do this and that. But I mean, my parents tried to make, things as possible as they could for the time. And obviously therapists did the same. But the struggle was there's so many different Elvis tribute artists. So I was just coming into this new, younger, and the competition was, I discovered, so it's a brotherhood, but it's also, on the other hand, in the business world and in the entertainment world, it can be so cutthroat.
Oh yeah.
Like it's almost like being an actual celebrity, because depending on how good you are, there's always going to be that one-up thing, and you always have to have your face on and, be presenting yourself. Even though as somebody who's autistic, I'll have to sometimes find myself when I'm on stage or if I'm getting ready for a show, having somebody, I have a really good lady in my corner. She was friends with my mom. Her name's Cindy. And I have another lady in my corner. Her name's Brooke, and another girl named Haley, and another friend of mine, Jim. And Jim does Elvis, and his one of his staff, John, but it was having those people in my corner like Cindy and Brooke, and to reel me back in and say, it's okay. You need to unwind. You need to step back and you need to refocus. Because I'm not always aware of that. I'm always going, I need to present to people the best possible, image or whatever, or show or presentation that I can give them so that, I get noticed or I don't present, I guess, disabled, if you will, from time to time, because that can be an enemy in the entertainment world, and it sucks.
No, it does. And I've heard that from a lot of people who have gone through the path of media. It's a double-edged sword, and if you get labeled versus people seeing you for who you are with all the characteristics, it becomes so challenging to be able to really define who you want to be seen as.
And it limits you and it patronizes you, and it just, for me, I want to be real, but it's also hard for me to let that guard down as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I only let it down for probably 3 or 4 people in my circle that I really, really trust. And on stage or getting ready for a show, that's hard because the public only sees one side of me. They only see that. They don't see the social awkwardness or the fact that, I'm struggling with other things, and they just see an hour of me doing my thing, and that's it.
And I mean, I think I see that in social media nowadays, is that like we all have our Instagram face or our LinkedIn face or whatever it may be. Is that everybody sees that part. And
public persona.
Yeah, it's so hard to get down to, what actually drove somebody to be where they're at. What are they struggling with? What are they challenging themselves with? But tell me if I'm wrong on this faulty assumption, but for somebody who is doing an impersonation, is that oftentimes they connect with that person on a level that in order to impersonate them well, they must find things about them. And for your case, Elvis, where it's like, I resonate with that. I feel that way. Like, I know this guy because I feel like I've lived parts of what he's doing. Is there any piece to Elvis where you're like, that's me? I see that. I feel that.
His younger life, his different dressing, he did the dressing very loudly or having a quirky, intricate, different kind of style that's not what everybody's wearing. And the fact that, growing up with not a lot of money, I did grow up in the suburbs and my parents did generally well, but I didn't see the struggles behind the scenes. So as I got older, it was relating to the poorness of it, and also the fact that he didn't stop doing what he wanted. He never let anything negative limit him, but also the other part would have to be probably the passion for advocacy and for helping others, because I loved how he was one of the first entertainers in the early 70s to play the International Hotel with Black background singers and to advocate for Black Lives Matter before Black Lives Matter was even a thing, and coming from the South and always being humble and always being giving. That, for me, I've always been one to advocate for the underdog. So that, even at a young age, before I understood what he was doing, the more research I did, it was like this myth that he stole Black music. That's the uneducated crowd. And I mean, I've defended this for years even when the new movie came out, I gained a lot of popularity with that because it brought Elvis back to the table. But the younger people, he stole Black music, and he did this. No, if you really take a deep dive into it and you go do your research, you'll realize that in the 50s, Black people weren't allowed on TV. So he brought that music to the front and gave them a platform so that in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and so on, they had a platform to express themselves in the entertainment world.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny is that without perspective, it's how do you put things into context, and there's a lot of that, and whether it's in this situation or in every other societal situation, perspective is key, and you have to empathize and understand and do all those important pieces.
Well, and it's funny you say perspective, because so you'll know this name, but you'll be like, who is that guy? And when I say his late wife's name, you'll be like, I know exactly who you're talking about. So doing this, I've gotten to befriend a lot of, I guess, I don't want to say famous people, but well-known people. But like, as you get to know certain people, like on a personal level, you get their personal pages, and you get to message people you never thought you would. And a friend of mine, really good friend of mine, his name is Larry Strickland. I met him because in the Elvis world, he sang backup for Elvis in his stage show in Vegas, and it was part of the backing band. But I only say this because I'm a big fan of country and Western music. And it was cool to get to know this person because his wife is the late Naomi Judd. Now, and his obviously Winona daughter. So that there's that. But I say this because we'll talk now and then on social media about different aspects of life, and mental illness is a big aspect, especially after he lost his wife. So you never know when mental illness or a disability or something like that is going to, I guess, hit home or be more relevant for you. And that's another thing I like, to be able to have an impact on other people and an understanding for what they're going through. Because you're not always that person on the poster or the person on the ad or that, there's a person behind every person that we idolize or sensationalize.
No, for sure. And just even on a day-to-day basis, the only way to really understand how somebody's feeling, how somebody's doing, is to have these conversations, to be able to ask them, talk with people, be real at that moment every time you have the chance, because it gives you a chance to learn somebody else's experience. And that's why I love doing these podcasts. It's the same thing. Is I feel like I learned so much about the abilities of so many different people and the passions and what they're doing to drive advocacy. I do have a question for you before we get into a little bit more of the stage life of kind of being out there and presenting, because I know you have a big show coming up. But before we get there, you're basically running a business too. I mean, it's if you are trying to schedule things out, you're running your social media platform, you're entering all the contests, you're trying to figure out how to be able to get all of the appropriate attire, how to get your practice time. And I know that you had said that you've been really working hard right now, and you're losing your voice. I mean, it's how do you schedule all that out? But it sounds like those are all such key life skills that not all of us have. And maybe you can give a little bit of an understanding of, how either you have brought in the right group to help you manage your business, or, what it is that you did for yourself to get to that position.
I would have to say, still to this, like, getting my feet wet was important, but also I'm still kind of learning. I still always look at this as, until there's like, the summertime gets busy, but until I make the right connections, which I'm working on, I look at it as a hobby, because I'm still working on my own stuff and other things. But getting my feet wet was the main thing. And then having obviously help from my counselor and Cindy and Brooke and some people that kind of are able to go, that know about people with disabilities and autism, and that work with people quite a bit actually here in the Fox Valley. So it's having them work with me, but also being aware of the fact that I can trust them and be open to their suggestions as well. And then trying to organize, dates, and I'm not really good with money. So they're able to help me budget and kind of be like, okay, you have this much, we need to put this aside, that sort of thing, which is crucial because I can't do everything. And numbers and money have always been a struggle for me, always, since it still is. But the learning the ways to find the people that are going to help you and that you can trust without getting taken advantage of, and also having people that know how to handle, seeing you and going, okay, if is this where you want to be, this is how we're going to work through that.
Yeah, and I could say that I went through the same experience with my work. It's trying to figure out who you can bring on to accompany you on this journey that is going to empower the vision that you have, to be able to bring out your stage presence, to give you a chance to perform. And you've brought that team with you. And you've gotten to the point where you're heading out to the Smoky Mountain Music Festival, the Elvis Festival, I should
Elvis
say.
Festival, yes, yeah, that's
And
it's a big contest, and it's my first ultimate. So
so what is an ultimate? Just to kind of paint the picture, because you live the life, you know all this. For some of us, it's this is new.
the ultimate is you can have like in a local city or wherever you're at, they have contests local on a local level. But the ultimate is the big league. All these contests are sponsored by Graceland and Elvis Presley Enterprises, which is the people that run the estate, and then Priscilla and Lisa and the people that worked with him and knew him and that run the estate. So this is the big leagues. They'll have all different guys from all different ages up there, and you're judged on costume, voice, presentation, what ring you're wearing, what necklace you're wearing. If so, they really pick it apart, and they want to decide the next ultimate Elvis tribute artist or the next person that's going to be working with legends in concert if they're good enough for a legend show. And it's usually 4 days, 3 or 4 days. You get your songs, you arrive at the hotel, you talk with some of the guys, you do a meet and greet. Then it's 3 days, 2 or 3 days of competing, and then if you make it, you go on to get a chance in the ultimate contest during Elvis Week and to represent yourself as one of the ultimates. And there's usually over 100 to 200 people. So if you make it, you're really lucky, because that's when you know you got it. But I haven't done one of these before, and I was invited to do this, and I was very pleased with Timmy Hendry, who's running this. He's another Elvis tribute artist, and I met him in La Crosse, Wisconsin, at Elvis Explosion, Ronnie Craig's Elvis Explosion. So he was doing it. I said, I think this might be a good opportunity. Let me check with some people. I had some friends of mine that said this would be great to, Aaron may not win, but it's a good way for him to get his feet wet and see what the big leagues, what he's going to be working with, possibly if he continues to a professional level of this is what he wants to do full time.
Oh, what an amazing opportunity. I mean, just to have the chance to compete against that talented a pool of Elvis impersonators. I mean, you have 60 years of people that have been doing this. I mean, it's, right. It's daunting. But so what would you say to somebody that, I mean, you do this advocacy work, you're living a life of saying, I'm chasing my dream. I'm going to do what it takes. I'm going to build those skills. You have a large voice to be able to portray to people who may be hesitant to do the same thing and chase their dreams. So what do you tell the next person who's trying to be able to say, I'm not limited by an identity or a diagnostic criterion or whatever, is that I can do all this?
Gosh, it's so hard, because I was so fortunate to have a supportive family, still do, and a sister who's a talented and very gifted librarian, and not teacher, but she was my tutor. She always wanted to do education, but to have people in my corner that were so gifted and so determined to help me succeed and not give up, that was important. So I would say I'm fortunate, but I would have to say not a lot of people are that lucky. And if you're able to do, even if you're not that lucky and you want to do something and you dare to dream, and you don't let anybody stop you from doing that, but also make sure that you have people that can kind of help you go through those paths and kind of lead you and guide you through that. Because I'm stubborn, and I'm going to say this to everybody. I'm stubborn. It took me a lot to open up, but it also took me a lot to trust people and let them see that. So you have to find the right people, and you have to be your authentic self. You can't be somebody that you're not. And I struggled with that for a while. It was like, you have to let your guard down to the people that are willing to be there for long term and in the long run, and that really truly care about you.
And I definitely want to help support this process for you. And I mean, one of the ways that we're able to do that is by helping others to be able to find your performances, to be able to kind of, maybe even book future performances or go out to the Smoky Mountain Elvis Festival to go watch you there. But
Yes, right across from Dollywood too. So it's a perfect vacation and Christmas present. I've faced a lot of backlash in the music industry, or in the music theatrical community, whatever you want to call it, and that's the one thing that's probably that been the hardest for me is when it comes to being your authentic self, is being around so many people. But I would have to say, social media. I'm on Elvis tribute artist Aaron Smith on Facebook, and I have my Instagram link on there as well as my Twitter on there, and you can find out where I'll be performing next on Elvis tribute artist Aaron Smith on Facebook, and you can reach out to me on there or some other platforms. But yeah, don't ever limit yourself, and also continue to have a passion, and whoever your inspirations are, look at those people. Mine, like I said, happened to be Elvis. There's probably four. I'd have to say Elvis, Whitney Houston, Tammy Wynette, and Harry Styles, and Mary Wilson of the Supremes. I can't forget her. But those were my people. And I would have to say, if you're a younger person, take those resources, take full advantage of the resources that you have, and educate yourself and look into what services and programs can help you, because that's key. That's really key. You want to say you can do it yourself, but you can't. I mean, you can, but you have to take that help when you can get it.
Yeah, I think that those are great words to live by. And whether or not you're doing that to be able to develop skills to be a performer or a business person or a community volunteer or just for self-care, is that we all have resources we need to go seek out and to learn.
Self-care, what's that? No, I'm just
I think we all need to do that. Yeah. But but I appreciate Aaron, the fact that you came on to our podcast to be able to share your dream, and hopefully is that our audience can get out there and to take a look at what you've been able to accomplish. And hopefully they'll get you into their town sometime soon, so we can start to see more performances.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey, for having me. It's a great thing to do. What you're doing is incredible, and it's an honor to be on the program and advocate for the people that don't have a voice, or that person that's saying, well, maybe I can't do this, that you can. And what I would have to say to families out there, if you have a loved one with disabilities, it's going to be challenging. It's not for everybody, but support them continuously. And if you can't do that, there's resources and tools that can help you with that. And everybody deserves a fair shake and to be their full selves and live up to their full potential. So that
is such great advice. Thanks again, Aaron.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Autism Weekly. We hope you tune back in next week to learn more about autism in the real world. Autism Weekly is now found on all the major listening apps, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon Music, and more. Subscribe to be notified when we post a new podcast. Autism Weekly is produced by ABS Kids. ABS Kids is proud to provide diagnostic assessments and ABA therapy to children with developmental delays like Autism Spectrum Disorder. You can learn more about ABS Kids and the Autism Weekly podcast by visiting abskids.com. Thanks for tuning in. See you again next week.